All right, we're live on the Instagrams and the YouTubes. So, good morning and welcome, or whatever time it is in whatever part of the world you're in. But I'm generally talking to Australians. So, it is 12 past 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, Daylight Savings Time, on the 3rd of March 2022. So, good morrow to you and welcome, fellow travelers of the interwebs. Here is the SitRep for today. Fair bit of information that's still floating around. Obviously, Ukraine is dominating the news cycle still, and all the fallouts from that are going on, and especially the financial fallouts that we're starting to see. I mean, that's not really dominating the news cycle so much, but it's dominating my interest cycle. It might even be a little bit avoidant within the news cycle of what the actual fallout financially is of these sanctions. But we'll get onto that in a sec. So I'll start off with just a reminder for those who haven't joined one of the sit reps before. The purpose of this is that I'm kind of out there looking at all the news cycles, all the information that's coming out. Got different sources that I try and keep abreast of. Insofar as looking at what I should be prepping for. So the main goal of this sit rep is to have a look at what we should be preparing for. Disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness being mainly what I'm interested in with Ragnarok Survival, and this is an information source for you guys. And that's really all I'm trying to do here. Not trying to freak anyone out or scare anyone, but just trying to put realistic information out there and plan the best way we can based on that information. For those who watch these on Instagram, I had to take down yesterday's Instagram one because it did not record the sound. So if you are watching along right now, please let me know if you can hear the sound. Apparently people could hear it on the live version, but when it went onto my post, onto the actual archived post, it didn't take the sound, which is unfortunate. A little blip in the matrix there, or perhaps the deep state trying to shut me down. I don't know. Probably just a stuff up, technical difficulty. But yeah, if you can hear me, then give me a thumbs up or something. Awesome. Thank you, Manny. Excellent. That's great. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so hopefully the sound gets recorded on this one so people can watch it afterwards. I know not everyone has the time and space at 8 o'clock in the morning to sit here and watch me ramble on. Okay, so I'm going to jump into it today with a couple of interesting things, or the things that usually pique my interest. Obviously, there's a lot of other information that's going on there, but I try and focus on the things that I go, whoa, that's interesting, and tell you why I find it interesting. So the nuclear talk always catches interest, and there's been more of that being bandied around on both sides. So Lavrov, who's the Minister of Defense, I think, for Russia, said, quote, "If World War III happened, it would be nuclear and destructive." And so that's getting bandied around a lot of the sources that I look at. And it's just that quote there, which I find very interesting because that's obviously him talking within a larger context, and we don't get the context for that. Media loves to grab these sound bites and go like, oh, he's talking about World War III and they're going to go nuclear. But what else was said in and around that actual interview? And I can't find a transcript, an English transcript of that interview yet, or that press release that he did. It's obviously out there in Russian, but I don't speak good Russian. I barely speak passable English at this point. So if anyone does know that, let me know, because I would imagine it would have been something like, look, we don't want to push towards World War III. It would be nuclear and destructive, and that's exactly what we don't want to see happen. But, the media's grabbed onto World War III, nuclear and destructive. Counterpoint to that, the US were about to do some testing with their Minuteman III missiles, which is nuclear-armed missiles, and they've canned that, or they've postponed that testing and training. So that's interesting. Let's keep our fingers crossed that cooler heads prevail here And, I don't think there's anyone, or no one that I could think of in their sane, rational mind would want anything to do with a nuclear war kicking out. So let's hope that doesn't tick off. But other threats that we're looking at, threat of NATO versus Russia. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs within Russia has said they think that there's an issue with Russia rubbing up against NATO, that something could kick off there. So they're starting to, mark that out, and rhetoric around this has started to happen. We're also seeing a little bit of this from Western sources as well. So MSNBC have basically said, or a few of their reporters have come out and said in their private channels, not live on air or anything, but in their private channels, information that is, tantamount to US and NATO should be using their air assets in Ukraine to sort this out. So they're kind of looking, these armchair generals are looking from the side. These are dudes who I'm going to assume have never been even close to a war zone, certainly haven't fought in a war. That is an assumption, but I think it's a pretty safe one. They're saying, why isn't US and NATO just flying their planes in there and ending this thing right now? So that would obviously, that remark within itself shows me that there's a huge disconnect there. There's a huge lack of understanding of the situation, because if that was to happen, obviously it would instigate a much larger battlefield. It would draw in a lot of other countries, a lot of other resources. So yeah, there's comments like that are inflammatory comments that are coming out daily, or almost hourly at the moment. And I just don't think people are really thinking about what they're saying. But it's worth keeping our eyes on this sort of stuff. Obviously, we don't want NATO and Russia to actually open into conflict. I say that obviously. Maybe some people do want that, but I can't see that going anywhere good for anyone at this point. Okay, so I'm going to talk about airspace now. So if you haven't heard, a lot of countries have shut off their airspace to Russia. There have been a few little breaches here and there of Russian commercial airliners, but there's been a few military ones that have happened in the last few hours, which are pretty important. So Japan has said that their airspace got breached by Russian helicopters, and Sweden has come out and said that up to 7 Russian fighter planes breached their airspace around Gotland. So Gotland is an island just off Sweden, on the Russian side, and it's for those who don't know, Scandinavians are very, very paranoid about Russia invading, maybe for good reason, but they're very paranoid about that, and their military and their defense is kind of geared towards Russia, very anti-Russian. And so Gotland is, one of their naval bases. They were doing exercises there. So Finland and Sweden were doing have started doing a joint exercise there at the moment. And allegedly, Russians flew over. Some Russian jets flew over and breached their airspace. So that's an interesting development that's happening there that we need to look out for. Considering too that Finland and Sweden in particular are starting to look at NATO and going, maybe we want to be part of this whole agreement now. So that EU NATO sort of amalgamation is starting to shake out a bit. And I think in the next month or two, we're going to see some pretty interesting developments within European countries. I don't know whether the dust is going to land with that, but it certainly looks at this point, because of the aggression of Russia, it's actually driving a lot of these countries that normally wouldn't want to be part of the EU necessarily, and normally wouldn't want to be part of NATO necessarily. It's driving them to do that now. So we'll see what happens with Finland and Sweden. This kind of concerns me a little bit when I'm seeing this sort of stuff in Scandinavia. It's one of my favorite parts of the world. And I think there are awesome people up there. So I'd really hate to see I would hate to see war break out anywhere, but particularly up there. Okay, so the US sanctions that are happening at the moment, the world sanctions that are happening at the moment, what we're starting to see now is not the unified front that I think everyone thought would be there. So everyone kind of assumed that the world would get in behind the NATO sanctions, the EU sanctions, the US sanctions, the UK sanctions, and follow suit on that, and everyone would pile on. But we're seeing countries who are actually going like, no, we don't want to sanction them. No, we're just going to stand on the sidelines of this one. We're seeing some countries that usually do stand on the sideline, like Switzerland, very neutral country, actually jump in and go, no, we are going to sanction, which is, you know, a pretty big change of tactic for them. And they're still saying that, oh, no, we're neutral. We're just going to sanction them. And I find that a little odd personally. But countries even like Mexico came out and said they're not sanctioning Russia, and they may even keep their trade ties with Russia, which, you know, is a bit weird. Like you'd expect that from somewhere like Venezuela or something. But yeah, when Mexico came out and said that, everyone was kind of like, hang on, aren't you sort of like pretty close to the US and want to stay tied to the US? But there's other stuff going on there. There's obviously a lot of money being thrown around here and a lot of money being taken off people, which starts to change things up. And the big one, you know, China, what their trade is like with Russia. Not only have they not decided to not really sanction Russia at all, but they have like gone into overdrive with trade with Russia. And I said this yesterday. This is something that needs to be monitored because all the sanctions in the world may not be effective in any way if China starts really doing trade with Russia, because China is such a huge entity that they can pretty much buoy up any country in the world at this point. So they've just opened slather on wheat was the big one overnight. They just took all restrictions, trade restrictions off wheat with Russia. And by all accounts, they're also getting coal through there, or some coal, oil. And as I said yesterday, they're also tied in with Iran, with oil there. China, I can't do the Trump impersonation. Sorry. Good morning, Lauren. How are you? Yeah. So the other part of the sanctions that I find quite interesting. The US are putting sanctions out there and then still apparently purchasing oil off Russia. They said, oh, we've toned it down, but they're still purchasing oil off Russia. And so, like, I look at all the sanctions and the sort of personal attacks that are sort of happening there around that Russian space, and where we're kind of like blocking sporting teams and small businesses, and you know, people are pouring out Russian vodka on the ground and all this sort of stuff. And then, you know, you've got these, like, so we, like I said yesterday, we're kind of plugging these little holes in the dike, in the dam wall, and then we've got massive excavators just taking massive chunks out of it, and it's pouring out and allowing the pressure to ease off Russia a little bit. So I can't quite understand. So oil and uranium are two of the big things that the US energy sector has basically said, look, we can't sanction Russian uranium. It will drive the price up of energy in US for our own people domestically way too much. So we can't do that. So the energy sector basically in the US is saying to the government of the US, do not sanction uranium. Don't do that. And also, we need more oil. Otherwise, the prices are going to be too high for your average Joe in the US, which is, you know, terrible. I wonder if they've actually looked at what the price that the average German is paying for their energy right now, because it has gone up at least 400% in the last year. So, you know, are US going to protect themselves and their own people and then kind of throw Europe under the bus? And one of my contacts who lives in one of the neighboring countries to Ukraine has backed this up. He said the actual increase on the ground of energy prices is utterly insane. And I think the numbers he gave me, he said it's gone up about 300% in the quarter, this last quarter. Imagine that right now here in Australia, that your electricity bill went up 3 times the amount it is now in the space of 3 months. So from one bill to the other, all of a sudden you're paying 3 times what you're paying. We're already paying. I already think we're paying like very expensive. I don't know what you're paying, but I'm paying a lot for electricity at the moment. That's why I'm moving to solar as much as I can. for me to pay 3 times that, I'd be like, well, I'm struggling now. I don't know. There'd be massive sacrifices in other things that I have to pay for. So I'd have to then start to juggle what I was actually paying for. And that's what people in Europe are feeling at the moment, is that kind of pain. So yeah, that's kind of the situation, or the things that have piqued my interest at the moment in that's happening in and around there. Well, there's a vote in the UN basically condemning what Russia's doing. So they put it to the UN and said, hey, everyone condemns what's going on here. And a few countries came back and actually said, no, we don't condemn them. I can't find the actual countries now. But Belarus was one. I know that. Syria was another. There was another 2 there that actually said, well, Russia was one of them, obviously, but actually said, no, what Russia's doing is fine. So, message there. Thanks. Iniquitous P. It's an interesting name. Just said same in England, mate. Food versus heating. Like I'm feeling for you guys over there. Like this is a terrible situation, and these sanctions. Okay, yep, that's one way we can try and curb behavior in the world. But who's actually getting punished for this? Is it Russia who's getting punished? Because they're sitting on oil, they're sitting on natural gas. Their population can still be fed and can still stay warm. Can Europeans say that right now? Maybe not so much. So maybe a different tact might be required here. Anyway, enough of my rant. So the UN voted. There's a little graph that came out of it, and you can see green, like across the border. Something like 140 countries, I think, voted green. Like, yeah, what Russia's doing is bad, and we need to do that. There was a bunch of countries that didn't vote. Most conspicuously, I think probably China is that on that list. But there's other reasons why other countries don't vote in these things. It's not it's not that suspect. But then there was 4 countries that said, no, Russia's doing the right thing, and we backed them. So that's pretty interesting, I think, that we're seeing that. There's certainly, in my view at least, what I'm starting to see is this formation of what looks like the Axis and the Allies. Again, people are starting to separate out and form up into their teams. All right. I'll just quickly talk about some stuff that's happening in Australia as well. Obviously, these floods are dominating the news cycle here in Australia. They're a big deal. A lot of rain here where I am over the past 24 hours, and a lot more expected in the next week. Minor flooding in my area, but nothing too crazy. Sydney got hit yesterday and is about to be hit again. There's a warning out for people in certain areas of Sydney to try and leave by 9 a.m. if they can. So you've got half an hour to pack your life up and get out. I shouldn't laugh at that. That's it's pretty serious. I do find it a bit amusing though that like I'm down here in a rural town and we've had maybe 5 or 6 flood events in the past 2 years, and never once, not once, have I ever heard any sort of news about an evacuation. Never once have they talked to us about evacuation. And every single flood event, there are hundreds of people who are isolated in their homes or on their properties or whatever it is in my area. And then this one event happens in Sydney, and they're saying people need to evacuate because you may be isolated for up to 24 hours. I'm like, are evacuation orders just for city people? Maybe it is. Maybe they realize that city people are actually slightly weaker human beings and can't deal with this sort of stuff. No, I'm just joking. If you live in the city, you just operate under different parameters to what we do out in the bush or out in rural lands. It's just one of those interesting things, I think. But certainly, if you are, I say this every time, if you are around any of these areas, please stay safe. Please do not try and drive through floodwater. Please never walk through floodwater. And if you have to walk through there, make sure you're doing it safely. Make sure you're doing it as many people as you can, and you're using safety equipment like RFDs, life vests type things. ropes and stuff like that to keep people tethered to, and testing sticks so you can actually test the water in front of you, so you're not going to step down any great holes or anything like that. Remember too, driving around, that roads get degraded very, very quickly from water. So you might think, yeah, I can't see through this water, but I know it's only this deep and I know this road's fine. Well, the water actually could have eroded that road out, and all of a sudden, this deep is that deep. And if you're driving a little Prius around or something, you're not going to have a good day. Yep, that is chick, because they can't sustain without the system. Yes, unfortunately, that's with a lot of people. And, one of the goals, I guess, of what we're trying to do here is guide people towards self-sustainment on some level at least, or self-reliance, that we don't have to always just rely on the machine, the big mechanism of society, because it's not always there for us in reality. Okay, financial stuff. I'll just talk about financial stuff in the crypto world just quickly. Now, crypto has had a big rebound yesterday as Russia sanctions came in on their financial system, and so Russians en masse just started putting their money into crypto and converting all their assets that otherwise would have been locked down into crypto. So that bolstered up the crypto market, and so we saw it shoot up very, very quickly. And so I looked at that and I was like, well, it's only a matter of time before the West starts looking at that and going even more at crypto. Because if you haven't been sort of following along this behind the scenes, the Western powers, powers that be, especially the banking system, has never liked crypto, really hates it. They want to kind of get rid of it because they can't control it. They can't even touch it. They can't see it. They can't see who's doing what in it at the moment unless people voluntarily give them that information. So it's a threat to them, and they want to build their own system. So they want to build their own digital currency, and they can't really do that if there's other systems out there that work as good, if not better. So they're always out this sort of stuff, and this is another target now painted on crypto, and we saw that. So at least one of the stories is, all like a lot of the big crypto has been targeted, but the CEO of Binance kind of got pulled up, and they said, "Hey, you got to put sanctions on all Russians using your system," and he was like, "Well, I can do what I feel is right, and you can do what you feel is right." This is paraphrasing, but this is essentially what he said. But I can't sanction a country. I can't even access that information really. But they're going to increasingly put pressure on these sorts of things. And one of the things he said, which is correct, he said, "Look, I can do that. I can shut this whole system down if you want, and then they can't use my system. No one can. If you want to do that, we can do that. They'll just go to a smaller system. It's just that Binance is big and you can see it, and that's why you're targeting me." Again, I'm totally paraphrasing, putting words in his mouth here, but that's essentially the vibe that he was putting out there, is that, sure, we can shut down, right? Yep, let's shut down this financial or this crypto app or this type of crypto coin or whatever it is. They'll just move to another one. There's thousands out there. There's literally thousands and thousands of these systems out there that they can access. So, good luck shutting that down. But now it's they're starting to line it up, and they're going, okay, who's in the good guy basket? All right, everyone who said Russia bad, they're in our good guy basket. Everyone who didn't say, it's not even those who said Russia's good, yep, they're definitely in our bad basket. But it's those who just didn't say that Russia was bad. They're also in the bad basket. So you can see that starting to form up now in many different realms, but crypto being one of them. All right, other stuff in the financial world. I'll just open up the market data. So the Asia, mostly in the across the markets, we saw a bit of a bounce back over the past, or overnight here in Australia, but over the past 12 hours. The Asia Pacific markets didn't fare so well, but the rest, like the European markets, all went up. American markets have all gone up. So a bit of positive financial news, I guess, in that realm. If we look at commodities, wheat continues to rise. Wheat's over 1,000. It's just up over 1,000 now. All the commodities are up. All the agricultural commodities are up. So we're going to see increased food prices. So that's going to continue happening. Coffee came down 3.39%. That's awesome. In energy, obviously the big one, I've already ranted about this a little bit, but just to give it a bit more perspective, Brent crude oil, what we make for fuel and everything else, like pretty much runs our world. Not pretty much, does run our world, absolutely. It had that kind of like mental barrier of $100 a barrel, $100 a barrel, which we thought that's going to be pretty sticky to get over that. And it went over that yesterday, and it is now at $114 a barrel. So again, like food, expect it to go up. Petrol, expect it to go up. Your fuel costs will increase and increase significantly. That's gone up 8.8 or nearly 9%. That's a lot. Oil up 13%, heating oil up 12%. These are all just indicators that everything in that fuel world is going to go up for us at the moment. So start reading that as it is. Maybe start putting a bit of your resources into stockpiling some of these things. That's certainly what I'm doing at this stage, stockpiling a bit more fuel in Jerry's and such stockpiling food and things like that, or more food, trying to bolster my stores out a little bit, my preps out a bit more, because I think over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see dramatic increases. And for those who don't realize it either, the food prices are going up in of themselves, the agricultural prices. The fuel prices are going up, but the only thing we require for food prices to go up is fuel prices to increase. So fuel is linked to everything that we have. That increases the price of everything because everything requires fuel in order to get to you. So unless you're growing your own veggies in your own backyard or buying it off a local farmer or something like that who's organic, then increased fuel prices are going to increase your food prices. They're going to increase the prices of your devices, of things you get sent to you, of shipping costs, of hats, of jumpers, of dogs, whatever it is, it's going to go up. So be warned on that. Just quickly on the metals. Gold is still up. I mean, they've eased off a tiny little bit, like 1% or so. So gold's come down a tiny bit, but it's still at 1,925 almost US an ounce. So that's still up there. Silver's still over $25 an ounce. So they're all up there. It's not here in the indicators that I can see, but aluminium has gone up as well. So that's another one. Aluminium is a pretty important metal. It's not just used for tinfoil, but making your tinfoil hats. But price of aluminium goes up, we're all going to suffer because our tinfoil hats are going to increase in price. So yeah, start stockpiling tinfoil hats. Okay, that is most of the major stuff that I wanted to touch off on today. So I'll just talk about some of the couple of cool little questions that came in that I thought were funny. As a joke, I put up, it's the end of the world. What questions would you want answered? One was from one of my friends who I gave a big recommendation to use a space blanket. And she used it while she was out on a arduous activity over the weekend, and said it rocked her world. And anyone who's ever used one before will know that space blankets do rock. And she goes, "What do I do with it now, though?" Because you unfold it. It comes in a tiny little package like this. You unfold it, and it's this huge, foily looking thing. Fold it back up. Use it again. Use it as insulation on your structures. Use it in your car to reflect heat off the windscreen. Or, just be part of the disposable culture, throw it out, costs like $3 to get another one. The next question was, if the end of the world is here, is it worth me painting my living room? Great question. And I think it actually is. It's obviously a funny joke, but it's actually like kind of serious. A lot of people right now are focusing on what's happening in the world, and we're looking at like the word nuclear get thrown out there, and war, and Taiwan getting taken by China, and all the financial system collapsing and stuff like that. And it's pretty easy to collapse into that bad sort of stuff. As Nietzsche says, if you stare at the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back into you, and that can happen quite easily. Take my word for it. Somebody who's worked in and around this sort of industry for almost 2 decades now, it is very easy when you're staring at the badness of the world to actually fall into that badness and become anxious, become depressed, become angry. All these sorts of things can happen quite easily. But life does go on. That's one thing that I've always seen. It doesn't matter in what war zone I've been in, what conflict, what collapse, what natural disaster. Eventually, life goes on. People pick themselves up, we adapt, and we keep moving forward. And that's what you should be actually thinking. So, great question there about whether you should paint your living room. Yes, absolutely, you should paint your living room. Plan for worst case scenarios, hope for the best that's going to happen, and continue moving forward. Like life is going to continue on, but if it does get worse, that you're going to be prepared for that as well. So that, and I say that with most preps that you're going to do. If you're looking at prepping something, and people, ask me these questions all the time. Hey, should I buy this thing? It's really expensive and blah blah blah. I said, are you going to use it? Like, if it's something that you're just going to buy and stick away, like dehydrated food, right, is a classic one. People are like, oh, I just bought a 10-year shelf life, 3-month storage of freeze dry food, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. And I've stored it away, and I go, cool. Well, like that's fine, but you could have also spent that money on food that you eat now that's just shelf stable as well. I'm not saying don't buy that, certainly, but also consider that. Like, what are you going to buy now that's going to protect you in case of an emergency, but is also going to benefit your life right now? And so that's how I try and think about, whenever I'm prepping and doing these sorts of things. Like, yeah, I still need to improve my house. There's still things I do for fun. There's still things that I buy that doesn't have really anything to do with the apocalypse or the end of the world. It's doing it now for me. And there's a lot of things that do both. I really love gardening. It's awesome. And it lessens my food costs here today now whenever it's successful and it's not pissing down rain and destroying my tomato crop. But that saves me money here and now, and I get the enjoyment of growing, of getting out there and gardening, and I get the enjoyment of eating the things that I actually grew. Plus, in an emergency, I've got a garden set up, so I can bolster that up and make that a little bit bigger, and maybe hopefully that's going to help me survive. You're a stoic and you don't know it. No, I definitely do know it. I am. If I was going to identify as any sort of philosophy, it would probably be Stoicism. I'm a big fan of the Stoics and their writings. And if anyone's interested in that, I suggest maybe start with Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That's a good place to get into it. I want to renovate my 70-year-old home. I wonder if there's any point to just keep my savings. I don't want to stay in survival mode. I wish to flourish and move forward whilst maintaining my veggie patch. Well, this is exactly it, right? If you're living in a rundown, dilapidated place and you're planning on fixing it up, then fix it up. If the shit hits the fan and everything goes to hell, then if you're in a dilapidated place now, it's going to be more dilapidated at that point. Okay, if you've put the effort into fixing up your surroundings, then if something goes wrong, and that's an if, there's no definites in this world. There's nothing to say that tomorrow we might all wake up and Zelensky and Putin are shaking hands and Putin's like, hey, I'm so sorry, I was just like doing some crack, man. Like, Joe Biden handed me a crack pipe and I don't know what I was thinking. And I lost it for a bit and I'm really sorry. And look, let's all go back to peace and love, all right? And everything cools off. That could happen. So, continue moving forward with your life. Continue doing the things that you should do. Don't pull out all your life savings and go and buy gold and guns and bullets and beans and stuff like that. Enjoy life now, because otherwise there's no point. What's the point in prepping if you're not enjoying your life? You could go and spend all your money on a concrete bunker and just go live in there. I don't think it would be an enjoyable existence, though. Keep connecting with people, keep fixing up your stuff, keep building your life, keep being a better person, keep moving towards being a better individual yourself so that you can radiate that out, have a better, family life, have a better community life, connect with other people, help build other people up. That's for me what this is all about. Yep, and Seneca as well. Well said. Seneca is my favorite, actually. If I was going to pick favorites, of the Stoics, I was just saying that meditation is probably an easy way to get into it. All right, that's end of rant today. So hopefully that somewhere in my ramblings you got something that might help you out. As always, if there's any questions, if you guys want to know anything in particular, or you just need to vent, you need to talk to someone about this sort of stuff, I'm always there on the DMs. I mean, I'm not always there, but I will answer you. I do try and answer every question that comes into me, everyone who sends me a message. So please, send that message. Make sure that you continue preparing for the future. Stay safe. If you are in the east coast of Australia, try and stay dry because it's pretty wet out here at the moment. Having said that, there's a lot of other weather events that are happening around the world too. And I don't mean to ignore them, but this is where I live. So that's what I focus on, obviously. Yep. And I will be on live tonight at 8 p.m. and I'm being joined by my friend Evelyn Ray, who is a social commentator and a writer. So it's going to be cool. We always have a good time whenever we chat. So it's going to be kind of like SitRep plus a little bit of social commentary. So, those parts where I start to rant off and start going a bit like, well, this is happening. And then I bring myself back because I'm trying to just display the facts to you guys here. I'm not going to restrict that. I'm going to kind of go off on the tangents and we might talk, who knows what sort of conspiracy theories and New World Order type stuff. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's always a fun chat. So please join us at 8 p.m. tonight for that. Yep, cool. Thank you. Thanks for joining me. Again, thank you for everyone who takes the time out of their day to listen to my rants. And, I hope that I can give you some sort of value in your life or in your day at least. Cool. All right. Well, until next time, everyone, stay safe and Semper Paratus.